Welcome to the Forgotten Prague tour. I'm Valery, your certified tour guide, and today we're gonna travel back in time to the past that lies in plain sight, and also talk about this pencil and why it is one of the most famous Czech inventions. We are starting at the bottom of the Wenceslas Square and beginning of Na Prikope Street. This is where we started our life in medieval Prague tour once upon a time. But today we're going to talk about something less distant yet more unimaginable. We're going to be covering the period when this place over here was a German neighborhood. That's right, not Czech. German. If you would walk inside of any cafe and try to make an order in Czech, people would give you a weird look because everyone who lived nearby here was pretty much German. Somebody vaped in my face. That was also because Prague and Czech lands were part of a huge empire called Austro Hungarian Empire, and the official language here was German, and the dominant culture was German as well. We are going to be mainly visiting Na Prikope Street today. Back then it was called Graben, which in both cases meant the same thing, on the moat or on the ditch. And let's jump right into it and have a look at the oldest historical photo that we could get our hands on. And the first thing that should stand out to you on this photo is that all the traffic and all the pedestrians are moving on the left side. Nowadays we have the right-hand traffic here that was first introduced in 1939 during the Nazi occupation of Czech lands. If you take a look at this historical photograph, you can see banners that say "Walk on the right," and they meant it literally and figuratively. And now let's look at some buildings. Over here on the left we have a postmodern building of Czech from 1970s, but once upon a time there was an older house here called the House at the Unicorn because it had a unicorn head as the a house sign on the corner. You can kind of see it on this photo. And that one came from 17th century, but it was destroyed in the year 1900 and replaced with a bigger building that was basically a shop for fabrics that was called Lobel. More interestingly, there was a cafe called Edison Cafe after Thomas Edison. And the reason why the owner of the cafe chose this peculiar name was because he was very aware that his business was located on the border between the two alleys, the Czech alley down this way and the German alley over here. So he didn't want to repel either of the two ethnic groups, so he named it neutrally after Thomas Edison. Much to Thomas Edison's surprise, because he had visited Prague for 2 days and was quite, shocked to find out that one of the most famous cafes in the city center was named after him. And as you can see on this historical photograph, there were a lot of carriages here, even in the beginning of the 20th century when the automobiles were introduced. People here were kind of conservative. Praguers preferred carriages because they were readily available. They could be found in front of every cafe, theater, train station, or at bigger squares. And now we'll be moving across the road from the Edison Cafe to another famous one called Viennese Cafe. It was located in a house that no longer stands here, and it was believed to be actually the oldest building of the new town, which we are right now on the border between the old town and the new town. So that house apparently dated back to 14th century, but the cafe was opened there in 1860s. It was very popular, mainly because it had pool tables. So that old house was also demolished, and I, by the way, did not mention its original name. It was called Ušpinku, which sounds kind of dirty in Czech. So it was torn down and they built this building over here. We still have that, and it is called Palace Koruna. Koruna was the insurance company, so that was the insurance company building. It has a very nice passage, and it was constructed between 1911 and 1914 by Antonín Pfeiffer. Alright guys, so now we can move somewhere else. Let's go. Okay guys, let's stop over here and have a look at this house, one of the oldest still functioning stores in the historical city center of Prague. Hans and Sons firm that built its store here in 1871. They were selling furniture, textiles, curtains and carpets. inside. Nowadays there is a Benetton, and it is built in Neo-Renaissance style. You can find the original cast iron staircase and columns inside. And if we look at this historical photograph once again, you will notice quite a strange vehicle. This was called the gallows, and it was used for the road work. So don't worry, it is not meant for mobile executions. And right opposite, you can find a very pretty Art Nouveau house at the Pelican from the beginning of 20th century. There's also a strange pizzeria called Sassy there, apparently. Okay, let's continue walking and talking about our Czech-German relations. I do have to emphasize that Germans have been living here since the dawn of time, and they actually coexisted with Czechs for centuries. Nationalism started to grow stronger and stronger by the second half of the 19th century, but we are going to cover that a little bit later. So for now, we arrive to our next stop, which is one of the oldest buildings that you can find on Na Prikope Street, and this is this beautiful Baroque Savarin palace. It comes from 18th century, and it was constructed by Kilian Ignaz Dietzenhofer. This was his last project from 1751. It was a palace for a noble family, later bought by a Count Silva Tarouka, and that's how the palace is called nowadays. This man is famous for establishing Průhonice Park. There's another name for this palace though. It's called Savarin, after a cafe that used to be located there. Lots of cafes. Praguers loved coffee, loved having a drink. Nowadays you can find Mucha Art Museum inside. They claim to be the only official museum of Mucha art in the world. And that's because I believe it was founded by Mucha's grandson and great-grandson. The palace has undergone a total reconstruction, but the fresco is still original. Alfons Mucha is the most internationally known Czech artist who worked in Art Nouveau style. I was not able to figure out how many original paintings or posters of Mucha they have inside though. They do have reproductions of, for example, Slav epic, but the originals are still in Moravský Krumlov castle, quite far away from Prague, and they're much bigger, so I don't even know how would they even fit inside of Savarin Palace. When it comes to posters, I'm not sure if they're original or not, because a poster is just something that is meant to be replicated, right? And if you guys have been inside of this gallery, let me know if you liked it. I know some people didn't because it was quite small, but oh well, maybe one day they will expand the exposition. All right, let's go this way. Okay, we didn't walk far actually. We are stopping right here at the house called Black Rose. Even though it looks kind of historical, only the facade is. It comes from 1840s, I believe, and the inside is very, very modern. And I will now bring you a bit closer to it so we can look at the Moser shop. I will just not be able to speak because they're blasting some music somewhere there, and we don't want to get a copyright strike on this video. Moser is a very famous glassware store, and Moser himself was born in Karlovy Vary, or Karlsbad as it was known back then. And he was also Jewish German bohemian, just like Franz Kafka. There's a huge puddle here. Now we've arrived to a Misselbeck shopping mall. I'm not taking you shopping inside, just a few words about this monstrous building. Instead of it, there used to be much smaller stores, and if you take a look at this historical photo, you will see here a store for accessories for ladies, and here is the jewelry store, and here is the store for Zinger sewing machines. Hands up in the comments if you still have one at home. These stores were unfortunately demolished in 1929 for construction of a bank that was never realized, and later there was a wooden pavilion, art pavilion, built instead of the stores, called Misselbeck, hence the name of this shopping mall. But what I wanted to tell you guys about shopping here back then is that it was very common to find a little sign put up in the window of a store that said "Buy from Germans only" or "Buy from Czechs only," depending on which area you were. And that is how nationalism started to infiltrate the daily life of people in the second half of the 19th century. And now just over here, we have one of the most unique buildings in Prague here, and this is this church of the Holy Cross that was built by George Fisher, or Jiří Fisher, in 1818 in Empire style. Not the Austro Hungarian Empire. It's not the Holy Roman Empire or the Roman Empire or not the Empire State Building. It is the Napoleon's Empire. So it's a French style that was not really a thing in this part of the world. Behind it, there was a German gymnasium. Another thing that we have to mention is that schools were also segregated. There were schools for Germans and schools for Czechs. So for example, Franz Kafka, because he spoke German, he went to a German school. And later, when he graduated, he went to the German part of the Charles University. Charles University was established in 14th century. And up until 1784, the main language that they were teaching in there was Latin, like in other places in Europe. Then they switched to German. And then there was a law passed when the university was split into Czech and German branch. And that division only fostered the rivalry between Czechs and Germans. In 1934, there were violent clashes between these groups. And that was because the Czech branch demanded the German branch to return the historic insignia and archives to them. They refused, so Czechs attacked them. Now we are going to be walking further. I think we're going to go this way. You can already see the roof of the powder gate over there, but we're gonna get there later. Every time I look at it, I wonder, is it even edible? Let's check out an Instagram spot. Ta-da! Now I brought you guys to Commercial Bank. It's a neo-Renaissance building from 1896 that was designed by Oswald Polívka. An interesting and unique feature of this building are those bridges, and they are connecting it with another building which is slightly newer. Nowadays you can find an art gallery, modern art gallery there. It is quite pricey though. Now let's go to our next stop, which is just over there. Okay, let's stop somewhere here because we're actually gonna go inside. Right now we are standing in front of a Slavic house, but its original name was actually a German casino. So how did that happen? German casino was a very popular hangout spot for the German population of Prague in 1870s. After the end of the Second World War, it was ostentatiously renamed as the Slavic house. Much as like many other buildings on the street, it has an old facade and a completely new interior. But this one you can actually walk through because even back in the day it had one of the biggest gardens in French style in the new town. Ta-da! It's actually very pleasant here in summer especially. You can sit outside. Now it's too cold obviously. So this is how the garden looks like nowadays. We can maybe walk over there. See? Take a look. It's very cute. Oh wow. You can just buy flowers like that. Never seen that before. That's very expensive though. Look at this one. It's 2,250. Close to 100 euros, right? Damn, I mean, they're pretty. I think this is where I was writing my výpověď z práce. You were helping me, you don't remember? No, it went well. Well, we are now going to be taking a turn back to Na Prikope through another passage, but before we do, I just wanted to quickly come back to our Czech-German relations. What was happening here in the second half of the 19th century is the Industrial Revolution. So a lot of Czechs started to move to the cities for work, and by 1861, Czechs constituted the majority of the city council. So essentially they took over German majority of the city, and by 1894, because of how many Czech people were in Prague, they started to add the Czech street signs all around, and the Germans were not happy about it. Not happy. Tensions started to grow, and in 1905 there was a huge demonstration. About 100,000 Czech people attended it, and they were protesting for better voting rights within the framework of that Austro Hungarian Empire. Let's go check out that passage that I told you about. Okay, we are out close to Jindřiška. over there, you can see. But we are actually going back. We're going this way. Cool. You can shop for art here. Look, this is Nový Svět and Lesser Town. This is Castle District. I like it. You can always find something interesting here. Oh, there's some dolls. Oh my goodness. Look at the face of this one. It's covered in rhinestones, I guess. Looks kind of creepy. Like they dipped her. Do you want a coffee, Václav?
I want to finish it. When we also have that chicken steak.
Okay, no coffee then. But if you will be passing by, it's a good coffee place. Art Coffee. All right, here it is. You can see the name over there. Quite famous art supply store called Kohinur Hartmut. It was established by a German man from Vienna, Hartmut, at the end of the 18th century. It is famous for the pencils. They had this groundbreaking technique of making pencils using the mixture of graphite and clay, and they won a bunch of awards for that. And the most famous pencil model is the yellow one. It is named after a diamond. Kohinur. Oh, and most importantly, these are made in Czech Republic. The production was moved in 19th century to České Budějovice, and it's still here. So if you want like a cool art souvenir, you can get that. I think we'll be stopping here. And of course, you guys probably recognize what's right behind me. We have the Powder Gate, the Gothic gate to the city of Prague. Spoke about it many times in our videos. Always busy here. And what I wanted to talk about here is actually Municipal House, a massive project that spanned over 6 years and was finished in 1911. And it was a house that was supposed to represent Czech culture. And now, knowing what you know after today's walk, you can really see why they picked this particular spot, because it was juxtapositioning Czech culture to the German one. They mainly have representative spaces, they have a lot of restaurants, they have cafes, they have concert halls, Smetana Hall, named after Bedřich Smetana, one of the most famous Czech composers. Even Alfons Mucha contributed to the construction and decorated Mayor's Salon. Very pretty, you can go there on a tour or visit one of the restaurants or cafes if you'd like. But what those people who worked on the Municipal House probably did not know at that time is that just 7 years after this project was done, they could proclaim the independence of the Czechoslovakian Republic on the balcony of the Municipal House on October 28, 1918. And this is the Independence Day that Czechs celebrate till nowadays. Czechs, not Slovaks though. I could speculate that Slovakians felt like for them it wasn't really full independence because they were always the second flute of Czechs. It was Czechoslovakia after all. They probably felt like they were politically underrepresented as well. But who got an even shorter end of that deal were the German population, the ethnically German population that still lived here, even though Austro Hungarian Empire essentially crumbled down after the end of the First World War. There were still a lot of ethnic Germans who lived on the Czech territory. A lot of them lived on the border with Germany in the so-called Sudetenland. And during the first Czechoslovakian Republic, so that's the period of time after the end of the First World War and before the beginning of the Second World War, Germans were radicalizing here. And that was precisely what Adolf Hitler used, which is chronologically where we start our Second World War and communism tour, which we do every week. If you are in Prague and you are interested in this topic, please join us at realpraguides.com. One last thing before we part is that for me, this was a really nostalgic tour to give because this was part of my Czech guiding school terrain exam. When you're studying to be a guide in Prague, you have to pass an exam which has an essay, a written test, a terrain exam where you go outside, and an oral exam. You, by the way, never know up until the day of the exam where exactly you will have to guide. They only tell you an hour before, so you have time to prepare. And when I found out that my exam would take place on Wenceslas Square and Na Prikope, I was absolutely terrified, you guys, because this, for some reason, for me, this was the most difficult part. So I had quite a lot of fun revisiting these memories place for our today's tour. So I hope you liked it. And if you liked it a lot, you can leave us a super thanks or like this video. It will also help us a lot. And I will see you guys in our next one. Bye!